Okay, welcome back everybody. Hope you enjoyed that video and I hope you enjoyed that first session. So I've known Jenny and Hardev and Simon for quite some time, but just listening to them all speak, I think I've learned something more about them. So it was a brilliant session, and I'm sure this next session is going to be equally as good, because I am joined by some of my wonderful Value Makers colleagues. So this session is going to focus on how the network itself has helped people to develop their career. So I'm going to ask each of my guests. So I've got here, so I've got Becky, I've got Jessica, I've got Daryl, and I've got Gayle. And I've asked each of them in turn to tell us who they are, where they work, and how long they've been involved in the network. So should we start right at the end, Jessica? Start with you, and we'll move this way.
So I'm Jess Ainscough. I'm a Deputy Finance Business Partner at Bolton Foundation Trust. Been a value maker for about 4 or 5 years, but I've been a bit more actively involved in the network for probably the past 18 months to 2 years.
Hello everyone, I'm Gayle Wells and I am the Head of Finance and Procurement Staff Development at Mersey, and I have been a value maker since 2004.
Hi, I'm Daryl Cockman. I work at East Suffolk and North Essex Foundation Trust as their Finance Training and Development Lead. I believe I've added value for the whole of my NHS career, but I've been part of the network since 2018.
Hi, I'm Becky Mae-Rose and I am a Deputy Reporting and Benchmarking Manager at Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust, and I have been a value maker for just under 2 years.
Thanks everyone. So this is a great opportunity to get your questions in. So if you are a value maker or you're thinking, what is this network about? Can I learn a bit more from these guys? Get your questions in and we'll feed them over. But I'm going to kick things off and I'm going to start the first question, Gayle, if that's all right. So Gayle is what we call, well, our original value maker. So if you've ever watched the Vampire Diaries, you know the originals, they've got like super special value maker powers. So Gayle, tell us, what was it that made you want to get involved?
Well, I've just realised I just said 2004, it was 2014, so let me correct that first of all, get that on the record. I'm going to be brutally honest now. You know, a lot of people who know me know I'm really straight and brutally honest, so I ignored the email for a little while. This was before it was an annual process to apply for value maker status. You had to apply, you had to be accepted, so it wasn't an easy process like it is now. And I did ignore the email. I was really busy. I'd worked in Wigan CCG for 10 years, and I think by that you can see that I wasn't very ambitious. I didn't see myself as particularly dynamic, and I was probably lacking in a lot of confidence at the time. And it was actually my director of finance who pretty much stood right in front of me, so I couldn't walk past him, and said, have you not seen that email in your inbox, and are you going to do something about it? And I said, I have, and it looks really interesting, but I have no idea what it means. And he said, I just think it's right up your street. You'd be brilliant at it, and anything that you want to make that role a success, you've got. You don't even need to ask me for anything. You've got my permission to do whatever you need to do to make it great. And I think it was him having that confidence in me that gave me that push to really do that, because at the time I really wasn't there in terms of, thinking back on the introvert extrovert conversation before, I very much was an I of an introvert, and now I think 7 years later how much has changed in that 7 years since being a value maker compared to that 10 years being in Wigan PCT. So I absolutely have Mike Tate, if anybody knows Mike Tate, to thank for pushing me in that right direction, for leading me into an uncomfortable decision at the time, which has completely changed my career. So yeah, thank you, Mikey.
And thanks, Gayle, because you've made such a contribution to the network, and I know many people who are thinking about it, you've actually been the person that's convinced them to get involved. So you're spreading that Mike Tate encouragement, aren't you, across the network at all times. Right, okay, Daryl, I'm going to pick on you next. So why was it that you decided you wanted to get involved, and where did you originally hear about the network?
Okay, so at the time I worked for the region, and the Value Maker initiative seemed to have passed us by, and I didn't know why at the time, until I came across a flyer. Some bloke called Simon Worthington was going to tell us all about what a Value Maker was, and so I went to the event. There was probably about 40 or 50 of us in the room, and it suddenly all made sense in terms of, it's a network that you can talk to like-minded people. There are loads of resources that can help you develop your career, develop your team, develop your processes. I thought, well, why didn't I know about this before? Yeah, why didn't I have this when I was developing my career? So in a sense, it really re-stimulated me in terms of sort of that training and development and getting things done. At the time in the East, we had 23 value makers. And I think there was a perception at that time that you had one value maker in the organisation and they were in charge of disseminating everything out. But you know, what Simon was saying is, no, we're changing all this. Anybody can be a value maker. And in fact, everybody is a value maker. And I wholeheartedly subscribe to that position. So on that point, I went on a little bit of a campaign in the East, and we sort of dramatically increased our numbers. And I'd use any kind of technique available. So if somebody was having an away day in their organisation, I'd ask if I could come along. And I'd talk to them about the value maker process, and then I'd say, here's a form, fill it in, you can become a value maker today. And that's how we started generating our numbers. The thing that I think we've got to work harder on in the East is getting people to look at all those great resources that are there and making use of those networks. And obviously the launch of the One NHS Finance strategy this morning will enhance that and allow us to sort of go further. And it would be great if we could get everybody to sign up as a value maker.
Thanks, Daryl. And you know, we talk about the Simon Worthington effect, don't we? So you know, we like wheel Simon into different places, and he stimulates, I think, that whole conversation. But you know, what you've done in the East is fabulous. You know, we have this like mini competition on value makers numbers, and Daryl and the team there have done fabulous. You know, the number of people that are now engaged in the East is completely different as it was a few years ago. So brilliant work there for you, Daryl. Right, where shall I go next? So Becky, so can you share with our audience today, how has the network helped you in your day-to-day roles?
So I'm relatively new to the NHS. I haven't been with the NHS substantively for 2 years yet, and it became very clear to me that as much as I had the accounting background, the business background, I didn't understand the NHS enough. So I was one of Daryl's recruits. I came through during that period of it all being really promoted, and I very quickly became the lead for our STP, joint lead that should be, and for our trust. And it's just given me that connection with the wider finance team, and that's absolutely invaluable. So my joint lead in the STP is from the CCGs. So by working with him and having those meetings, it's the additional chats that you have where you get to find out about how other organisations work, and it is absolutely invaluable. My time before the NHS was in small business. I had my own business, and networking was so valuable there, and I think that's maybe undervalued sometimes within the NHS. And I just really clocked on that maybe that's what I could help bring to the NHS, is the understanding that it's those personal relationships, that network that really helps. And because my day-to-day role is in the benchmarking side of costing, that's all clinical engagement, and that only comes through building the relationships and making that connection with people. I've always said I like the people side of finance. I like helping people who maybe not so connected with the numbers understand it, and you only do that by knowing the people.
Thanks for that. That's great, Becky. And you know, it's often we all get asked, don't we, when you know, whether you're in the network or you're trying to encourage to be part of it. You know, so what's in it for me, or what's that going to mean, and how do I do that on top of everything else? And I think just to actually see it as something that's going to facilitate you to be able to do your job is probably one of the key strengths of what we do, isn't it? So that leads quite nicely on to my question, which I'm going to ask Jess to share with us. So if someone was questioning, so we've got a group of people that will be sat there at home today, some of them were value makers, some perhaps not. So what would you tell them or convince them of the reasons why they should sign up and get involved in the value makers network?
The thing I would say is just do it. There's so many benefits to being a value maker. There's so many fantastic resources available, from the toolkits to the slide packs. There's so much information available that can really help you in your day-to-day job, whether that's the training packs, the toolkits can be massively helpful in line management. There's fantastic people involved in the network across all the regions with different experiences, different knowledges, different skill sets. You get to know more people across your region, but you get to tap into more knowledge and expertise that might not necessarily be within your organisation. You can ask questions and you've got a whole lot of people to ask advice to outside of your own organisation. So you can really tap into that resource, and it just gives you an extra skill set in your job to make things a little bit easier. And then even the national team in FFF, all the support that they can offer, all the events that are available, and obviously we've seen today all the great things that are being launched, all the things that are on the horizon, all the opportunities that it gives you being involved in the Value Maker Network, being a face, being involved in FFF. It opens up so many opportunities. So I'd just say do it, because you won't regret it.
Thanks. Well, if that hasn't convinced you all, I don't know what will, but I'm just going to ask, actually, Gayle, just because you've been involved for such a period of time, you must have been asked that question dozens and dozens of times. So what do you say when you're trying to convince people to get involved?
I often ask them actually the opposite. So I often ask them why they wouldn't do it, because it's a bit difficult for me to describe why to get involved, because I love it so much and it's just part of me. But I always like to understand why somebody would consider not doing it, and often the answer to that is I'm too busy. And my response to that is we absolutely have to work smarter and not harder. We cannot work any harder than we are working. But the Value Maker gives you the power to work smarter, because we've got all of our collective brains together, got our collective energy together. When I'm down and low in energy and really struggling with thinking about something, a half an hour with a Value Maker colleague can make all the difference to me thinking about something, giving me the space, the reflection time. So working smarter, use the Value Maker Network, 100%.
Thanks for that, Gayle. So I've got some questions that are coming in now, and I might well go out to the audience as well if people here want to ask something of our panel today. But one question that's just come through, so and I think this is on the same theme as the question that Gayle and Jess have just answered. So a lot of people do think it's extra work, and we can sit here and we can try and convince everybody, it's a great thing to do. It's, if you're positive about working in NHS finance and making it a great place to work, sign up. But actually, can you give us a tangible example of how it's made a difference, or something that's happened, or it's enhanced your career, or you found a solution, so somebody can actually think, oh yeah, actually I'm going to do that because I can see how it'll work. So Daryl, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, ESNEF has recently got its level 2 accreditation, and part of that work was taking one of the toolkits and seeing how we compared with it, and we looked at some of the work that we did on hard to retire, and for the most part, what we found was that we were operating within best practice, but we didn't really know that until we actually took the toolkit and looked at our processes and compared them with what it was saying. So that was a great endorsement, that the fact that we were doing things right. There were some things that we saw that we weren't doing now, but we knew that we had plans to implement them. So that's sort of one example where you can make use of the resources. But certainly, the other thing is, this morning it talked about reinventing the wheel, and why do we do that? Why do we do that? There are loads of things, so if you wanted to make a presentation to a clinician and you hadn't done it before, there's a resource pack there that you can use. You might need to adapt it slightly, but 80% of it is probably there and can be used.
Thanks, Daryl. I mean, and it's a great sort of promo, isn't it, for what's on the website, because there's genuinely lots of resources there to help you do your jobs and help you do your jobs better. So I've got another question that's come in here, which is, if you were to give some advice to a current value maker on how they can get other colleagues within their organisations to get engaged with the ONF programme, what would that be? So if I ask Becky.
I'd say speak about the best things that you've experienced, because when you're being honest, and especially if you're enthusiastic, that enthusiasm is quite infectious. And I think that's the best compliment I've had, is that it's infectiously enthusiastic. So just talk about your best bits. And again, the things that saved you time, because we're all chasing that little bit of extra time. But it was something that was spoken about this morning. You get so much more time back, because when you make those connections, the little bits of information that are passed might save you a whole chunk of time, which then gives you that bit of time to go off and do your value maker stuff. And those connections are absolutely invaluable.
That's great advice. Great advice. Thanks, Becky. So just last question, I think, for our panel. So one of our questions that's coming here is there a place to go? So where would your advice be? A place to go to find where some of the successful value maker schemes would be? So if somebody's looking for some inspiration or some opportunity to not reinvent the wheel, where would you recommend that they went and looked? So Gayle, do you want to see you nodding there?
Yeah, I actually pointed somebody who came onto the value maker teams pages this week, or last week it might have been, who was new to the NHS, new to the role, wanted to know how people were costing new business developments up from a staffing perspective. And Ricky, our brilliant Ricky Value Maker, has made a fantastic costing tool that exists and that's been shared widely by the Facebook group. So Facebook and Teams would be the two places I would look to connect with, because yeah, put a question on there and we'll point you in the right direction.
That's great, thanks. Okay, so I am going to open it up to the floor here. Have we got anybody who would like to ask a question? Let you all ponder that. You stunned them all into silence because you've told them so much about the network. So whilst everyone's thinking about that, it's just, I guess, just to add to the discussion, you know, the network does really give you, you know, opportunities around your career. I think I'm an example of that myself, stood here. So the only reason I'm involved and, you know, got the absolute privilege of being the SRO of the network is because, you know, my team went and put forward an award for one of the HFMA, the Havelock Award. And we went down to do the award, and we tried to really embrace the FFF programme in what we did in the organisation. We showcased what we were doing around value makers, and we'd made a value maker award ourselves, and we tried to get the whole organisation putting forward awards. And following that process, we did win the award as well, which was fab. You know, we won the Havelock Award that year. But I was approached personally after that to say, oh, actually, you know, you look like you're really, you know, behind this movement. We think, you know, would you like to come and work with FFF? So, you know, it's only through my involvement in the network and my passion for this that I'm in this position today. And I think, you know, you guys are 4 other examples of how the network's helped you and supported you throughout your career. So if I have no more questions from my audience here. No, I haven't. So I just want to say a huge thank you to each of you. And if we can just thank our panel in the usual way. Thanks. So I'll be checking the scores on the doors as Simon described it, and I'm sure we're going to have a whole host of people now who've been inspired to come and join the network. So I think now it's time for us to take a short break. We've got about 10 minutes. And then if we come back in about 10 minutes time, we will start with the second half of the programme. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.